What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. So I want to talk about this whole Jussie Smollett situation for a quick second, and specifically more so the Jussie Smollett situation um, involving Chris Rock and his joke, and featuring Trevor Noah as well. And I just kind of want to talk about that whole situation, and from a colorism perspective. All right, and by the way, this is very much kind of like more so a rant, you know, um, just talking off the top of my head a little bit here. All right. But nevertheless, I saw the footage at the NAACP Awards where Chris Rock was telling a joke about Jussie Smollett, right? Something to the effect of like, um, him being like a waste of like light skin or something, and sort of hinting that he being lighter skinned or whatever may have had something to do with them dropping the charges. Perhaps, maybe not. Who knows? Because there's a lot that goes into that. To be real, like Jussie Smollett is a celebrity, but at one point during that whole situation, they were talking about like 10 years in jail and stuff like that. So I don't really know how how it kind of, the tide turned in his favor. But for the record, I don't agree with what Jessie did. I do think that was extremely irresponsible. Very narcissistic and even a little like sociopathic, like psychotic, sociopathic, psychopathic, kind of weird. Almost like, in a way, like coming off as being really desperate for attention. Like, are you that desperate for attention to fake a crime against yourself or something? And then some people are still like, oh, that did happen. It's a real thing. I don't know. All right. But people were a little skeptical from the beginning, to be real. I kind of didn't really. I took the story as like kind of like low key rumor, and people kind of felt like Jussie Smollett wouldn't really be the target of a racist like Trump supporter anyway. Anyway, and that's debatable. To keep it real, that is debatable. Because then some people are like, well, light-skinned, biracial, mixed black people experience racism too, which is true. Which is true. And some people may feel like, well, on the other hand, it's like, well, is Jussie really like if you see Jussie on site, would you really see like a black person like right off the bat? Especially if it's at a distance. Let's be real. You know. And did they know Jussie before, during the like? Did the attackers quote know Jussie? Yeah, or know of Jussie rather? Like, did they know that he's like part black or homosexual, an actor, a famous person? Like, did they know all this, right? Again, quote unquote, right? But I'll say when anti-blackness happens to lighter skinned people, I do think that very much it becomes even more evident of how deep anti-blackness really goes, right? And it probably is sort of like low-key, sort of like a little more triggering, a little more disturbing. And just because I think people may not offhand associate Jussie Smollett with being black. Again, that's debatable. Some people are like, well, of course he's black. And then other people are like, well, I don't see a black person. Again, I'm not really here to discuss that aspect of it, though. More so the colorism aspect of it. Well, that could factor into colorism, but more so the Chris Rock situation, right? So some people, especially some black women, are like, well, now folks know what colorism is. Right? Of course. Folks know what shit is when it affects them, right? When it directly negatively affects them, then they know what shit is, of course. The same thing with racism, right? Like these white folks coming out saying, "Oh, that's racist," right? When Jussie Smollett's situation negatively affected them, right? But when racism positively affects them, then it's like, oh, well, it's not really like that, or, oh, we can't help how things are, that's just how things are, right? And the same thing with colorism, right? When you're benefiting from colorism, or anything really, you're less likely to call it out, right? Even though it may negatively affect the person next to you, but you're thinking about yourself, right? You're putting yourself first. Um, so, yeah, folks know about shit when it affects them, negatively affects them. All right. Um, just like that whole Will Smith situation where Will Smith playing the part of Serena Williams' father, right? Folks know what colorism is now, especially when it happens to like a darker skinned black man. Then I tell you, like the rally cry is loud. The rally cry is strong, right? you know, they will not tolerate you coming for the Black Kings. I'm telling you, black men and dark skinned black men and the dark skinned black women are on the same page, right? But when it happens to the dark skinned woman, she alone on her own, and that's why I gotta turn around to the dark skinned woman and be like, hey, you need to stop supporting that which does not support you. Okay? If you are supporting folks and they are not returning that support to you, especially when you need it, especially when folks know your situation, then you got to stop supporting the bullshit. Also, I want to talk about that whole Trevor Noah situation, right? At the awards. Yeah, like Trevor Noah, he very much laughing a lot at Chris Rock's joke about colorism. Trevor Noah, he, for some people, he seemingly came out of nowhere and became the host of The Daily Show. I think that's the name of that show. Um, that show that Jon Stewart used to host. I think it's The Daily Show. Um, is it The Daily Show? I don't know. For those of you who don't know, Jon Stewart he has Judaic origin, or Judaic heritage. He is of Judaic origin. And y'all can miss me with that whole, they are the imposter Jews. We are the real Jews. Like, this ain't the place for that. All right. Trevor Noah also, I believe, has some sort of Judaic lineage or Judaic heritage as well. And that may have played a part in him being offered the host to be the host of The Daily Show, right? But some people were offended by Trevor Noah, him laughing so much. Some people were like really offended by that because I guess they kind of feel like he's taking colorism as like a big joke, perhaps, right? And perhaps is not sensitive to colorism issues that go on in the black community, especially when it comes to like darker skinned black women, right? And I can understand where folks are coming from with that, definitely. And as well, I had thought about making a video about talking about Trevor Noah's, fuckery and all that shit. I just got sidetracked and never got around to doing it. But basically, it was just a video about Trevor Noah, very much holding his mother up to a, kind of like putting his mother on a pedestal and talking about how amazing she is. Although, you know, kind of like the women that Trevor Noah has been linked to have not been reflective of women like his mother, right? And, you know, just a little like, you know, a bit of a side eye there. Again, it's an observation. I'm not, you know, quote unquote dick policing anybody here. I'm just saying, all right? Just something to note and just something to, you know, have in mind and to be cognizant of, right? Because oftentimes people talk the talk, but they don't really walk the walk, right? You know what I mean. Um, and as well, Trevor Noah is from like Africa. He's from South Africa, and he was raised, I believe, in like a black environment because his mother primarily raised him, and I think she may be Zulu. I'm not sure. Um, but he was raised like in a community within like a native African ethnic group. I don't think he was raised in like a white environment. Definitely not. Definitely not. And I don't think he was raised in a colored environment, which they call their mixed race biracial folks in South Africa. I don't think he was raised in that environment either. So, you know, again, a bit of a side eye there, you know. And as well, Trevor Noah has joked that, oh, you know, he wanted to come to America to be black, you know, because like in South Africa, he's not considered black. He would be considered, you know, colored, which is what they call their, again, their mixed race biracial folks there in South Africa. So, you know, a bit of a side eye there, you know. Again, seemingly low-key pro-blackness, but notice how folks pro-blackness tends to skip over the black woman. You feel me? That's suspect to me, to be real. That is suspect. And I have called that out before, where these guys come through and be on this like pro-black tip, but then when it comes to the women that they're with, the women that they're with and linked to, don't seem to be reflective of that pro-black tip that they were on. Yeah. Also, some people talked about what if Chris Rock was a dark-skinned female and made that same joke? You know, perhaps towards even a light-skinned female. Would it have gone over the same? Would she have been considered a hater? Would she have been considered, you know, exacerbating the color divide? You know, dividing the community? Probably. Let's be real, probably. They probably would just, we know how it goes by now, right? I think when it comes to this type of stuff, anything that upsets the status quo, anything that upsets the colorism hierarchy will be challenged, right? So that dark-skinned woman, when she speaks out in the form of a joke, she low-key is still challenging the status quo and upsetting the hierarchy. So because of that, people will probably still come for her, even though it's a joke, right? Chris Rock, I don't think he's upsetting the status quo. He's not upsetting the colorism hierarchy in the black community. Because of that, folks will probably not come for him. You know? And as well, I think when it comes to the dark-skinned brothers, I think they will just, they ain't tripping over this. You know, by and large, they ain't tripping over this. You know, they'll just take this L and keep it moving. Because, you know, we know how they do by now. We know how it goes with them by now. All right. They will just indulge in their light-skinned, mixed, and biracial women. And, you know, their status within the community as being top pick, number one. You know, no matter how ugly, busted, disgusted, rusted they are, all right? They will be uplifted. So they're not going to really be tripping about this. But nevertheless, I do think this is something worth talking about, though, right? Yeah. And once again, I'm not quote unquote dick policing anybody. I'm not in it like that. All right. These black women might be in it like that, but I ain't in it like that. Again, I'm making an observation and making conjecture based on observation. All right. If you don't like my observations, if you don't like my conjectures, then that sounds like a personal problem. Kick rocks. But I think I've said all I pretty much have to say about this subject. People in the audience, I think some people were kind of like not laughing at Chris Rock's joke. And then some people were laughing at Chris Rock's joke, right? So I guess it depends on how colorism affects you, where it's like, well, that's not a joke. And then some people are like, that's the funniest joke ever, Trevor Noah. Was Jussie Smollett in the audience? I don't think so. I don't think so. And then some people were like, oh, look at who they panned to after the joke, right? Issa Rae, dark-skinned female. Trevor Noah, light-skinned male. But we know how, how much bullshit the black community is on when it comes to colorism, though. We know that. That's not anything new. That's not a surprise. Unfortunately, it's not a surprise, right? But yeah, that was just my take on the situation. My rant. Very, spur of the moment, spontaneous, off the top of my head. Just wanted to give you my opinion on this situation, right? And, Jussie Smollett should consider himself really fortunate. I do think that, again, they should not have did that. I think that was irresponsible as well. Also, when it comes to situations in the future, this situation could be used to undermine people who really are victims of hate crimes, especially black people who are really victims of hate crimes, right? Where it's like, oh, are you making this up? And there's already so much that you have to go through, even when everything is true, and even before the situation, when everything is, provided everything is true, there was still bullshit that you had to go through. So, yeah, it kind of just made it tougher for black people. But thank you for watching. Please feel free to comment and let me know what you think. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.